We live in a culture obsessed with dieting, weight loss, and exercise, and that can make eating disorder behaviors easy to miss. But the reality is, eating disorders are serious mental illnesses that take a major toll on your health and your life. But recovery is possible. Eating disorders are more common than you might think. Chances are you know someone who is struggling with one, or maybe you're struggling yourself. If you're concerned about an eating disorder in yourself or a loved one, I want to introduce you to Equip. Equip is a fully virtual, evidence-based eating disorder treatment program that helps patients achieve lasting recovery at home. Every Equip patient is matched with a multidisciplinary care team that includes a therapist, dietitian, medical provider, and mentors. And you get a personalized treatment plan that's tailored to your unique goals and challenges. Equip treats patients of all ages and all eating disorder diagnoses. It's covered by insurance, and there's no wait list. If you think that you or a loved one could be struggling with an eating disorder, don't wait to get help. Visit equip.health to learn more. That's equip.health.
I'm done with subscriptions. Streaming, fitness, razors, vitamins. I've got subscriptions for everything in my life. They lock you in, and half the time, I can't figure out how to unsubscribe. That's why I'm so excited about the new Blue Apron. Now you can get delicious meals delivered with no subscription needed, including new pre-made options. Keep the flavor, ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Knock, knock.
Ooh, who's there?
A Boost Mobile expert, here to deliver and set up your all-new iPhone 17 Pro, designed to be the most powerful iPhone ever.
You call that a knock-knock joke?
This isn't a joke. Boost Mobile really sends experts to deliver and set up your phone at home or work.
Okay, well, it's just that when people say knock-knock, there's usually a joke to go with it.
Like I said, this isn't a joke.
So the knock-knock was just you knocking?
Yeah, that's how doors work.
Get the new iPhone 17 Pro delivered and set up by an expert wherever you are. Delivery available for select devices purchased at boostmobile.com. Terms apply.
Welcome to Aran Island Discs, a podcast series where we talk to Irish people from different walks of life as they reflect on their own journeys. Join me, Russell McDermott, as we explore the many aspects of Irishness and what it means to each of our guests through life's ups and downs. Dan Mulhall, welcome to Aran Island Discs.
Thank you.
Now, first trick question is, have you been there and how did you travel there?
I have been to the Aran Islands. It's quite a few years ago now. It was when my wife, who's Australian, first came to Ireland. We visited the Aran Islands together and we travelled by ferry from Galway. I was quite keen that she always talked about this island off the coast of Perth in Western Australia called Rottnest Island. And I love going there. I've been there a number of times and it's a great place to go. So I thought I've got to sort of expose her to the equivalent of Rottnest Island, which would be the Aran Islands. So we went to the Aran Islands. And we travelled by ferry from Galway and we spent the whole day there. We went out as far as Doonangus. That's a wonderful place, I believe. That's one of the great sights of Ireland is Doonangus. And we went out there and we came back. We had a few drinks in the pub, had a meal, and then travelled back that evening. Didn't stay overnight, but I must make sure that I book myself in for a night on the Aran Islands one of these days.
Yeah. It's a remarkable place, isn't it? Visually,
it is. Yeah, well, you see, I've always noticed that people that I met over the years who've been there, you know, Americans or British people or people from Germany, they always kind of see it as a highlight of their time in Ireland because I suppose it is a place where, you know, the old kind of traditions have survived longer than elsewhere and so forth. And people often talk about, you know, not just being in Inish More, but Inish Man as well, Inish Here. So, it's a place that really does tickle the fancy of Irish people and of people who come to Ireland as visitors who really love that immersion in a kind of a world that has maybe disappeared from other parts of the globe.
Yeah, very true, yeah. And how did your wife from WA think it looked? All right?
Oh, I know she was very impressed with it. She loves Ireland. She's been, of course, in Ireland a long time now. And, she's represented Ireland as part of our embassy team for, many, many years as well. So, yeah, no, she would have fond memories of the Aran Islands. And in fact, I'd like to think I might go back there with my children and grandchildren who've never been there. They would really, I think, appreciate the Aran Islands. I must see if I can find a big house where we can spend a week maybe sometime in the future.
And how was the weather that day? Did it hold up?
It was good. It was good. Yeah. It was good. It was summer and it was a good day. It was a fine sunny day. And I remember it was a pleasant trip out to Doonangus, which we really enjoyed.
Yeah. And how did you describe yourself then? Diplomat or writer?
Yeah, I suppose I mean, I'm obviously an ex-diplomat, so I'm a retired ambassador. And, when I'm in America, a lot of people are, interested in the fact that I was ambassador there. So I kind of, that's a big part of my kind of calling card in America. But generally, I think of myself now as an author and a commentator. I try to be as active as I can on social media and media generally in trying to put out my ideas about Ireland and the world and to see whether my experience may be relevant to people who are reading or listening to what I have to say.
And that was what you wanted to do when you were studying in Waterford and Cork?
No, not at all. No, it was a sort of an accident. It was a benign and a happy accident. But I remember I had no intention. I was actually headed for an academic career. I had won a PhD scholarship to go to the Australian National University in Canberra.
Wow.
And ironically, I ended up living in Australia for a while and ended up marrying an Australian. But that was my kind of ambition at that stage, to go to Canberra and do a PhD in international relations. And then Foreign Affairs came along. And I remember the day it happened, actually.
Well,
a friend of mine...
somebody suggested you do the third SEC exam, did they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it was a guy that I knew. He's sadly now deceased, but he was a friend of mine at college, and we had little cubicles in the science library in UCC. If you were a postgraduate tutor, you got a little cubicle where you could store your books and so forth. And, he knocked on the door one day and said, "Hey, Dan, look at this ad for diplomats, third secretaries in the Department of Foreign Affairs." I said, "Oh, not for me. That wouldn't be for me." And he said, no, read the description. This is you. This is absolutely you to a T.
Wow.
And I read it and thought, not really. I don't have French. I don't have German. I don't have any foreign languages. I only speak Irish and English. How am I going to be able to join the Department of Foreign Affairs? But he said, I'm sending away for 2 forms, and I'm going to make sure you fill it in. So I filled it in, and I was called for the exam, first of all, and then for interview. And I ended up being offered the job and never ended up going to the Australian National University after all.
Wow. I sat them in Madrid and I didn't get called, so you must have had the right answers.
No, I remember it as a moment in my life, because I remember going into this big room in Cork. There must have been 150 people there just doing the exam. Now, it wasn't just for third secretary; it was also for executive officer or for administrative officer and tax inspector and so on. So there was a lot of people up for the exam, and then the interviews, of course, went on over a period of days, and eventually I got the offer. And I tried to defer the offer and spend a year or two in Canberra, but it didn't work. They said, "No, you either join us now or you're gone." So I had to join. Because in those days, of course, you had to join before you were 26.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you couldn't join. Now you can join anytime. But in those days, they had a fairly strict requirement. They're really looking for recent graduates rather than people with more experience.
Yeah. What does being Irish mean to you? Because you have an official view, you have your own personal view. Is Irishness something you carry on your chest important?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I mean, look, I've always been passionately patriotic and so forth, and therefore, I suppose, in that sense, the job in foreign affairs probably did suit me down to a T. Because, I love the landscape of Ireland. I was fortunate that when I was a boy, my parents had this habit of, they always took us away for a holiday, and we traveled all over Ireland, in caravans, and we visited a lot of the country. We used to go to the west of Ireland, go to Kerry, Cork, Galway, and so forth. So I got to see the country at a young age and got to appreciate its beauty. And then as I got older, I started to appreciate our language. I'm an enthusiast for the Irish language. I started to appreciate our literature. I'm currently honorary president of the Yeats Society. I've written books on James Joyce and W.B. Yeats. And I started to really enjoy our traditional music. I was part of that generation of Irish people that discovered Irish music through Clancy and the Bothy Band and those.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a different version of the Irish musical tradition, which maybe predecessors of mine wouldn't have been able to access, because in those days it might have been more the Kilfenora Cayley Band, who I'm sure were very brilliant in their own way, but somehow Clancy offered a kind of a 1960s version of Irish traditional music, which really did kindle an interest in me. And I always enjoy now going, when I'm in Ireland, going to a traditional music session is always one of my great treats.
Yeah, people forget Clancy. They played in UCD in my time in 78, 79, and it was like a rock show.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And I mean, I remember
nobody knew Irish music in that kind of frame, really.
Yeah, exactly, because, I mean, we'd only really heard the kind of, well, when I was at school, we had Cayley dances, of course, at school in Waterford. Yeah. And, it was always kind of, pipe music. It was always just, music played over the loudspeaker, which was basically Cayley, fairly basic, like the Kilfenora Cayley Band and those that played a sort of a fairly traditional version of Irish music. but Planksty played it with long hair and played it with different instruments, and it kind of excited me and my contemporaries at the time to think that Irish music had something in it that we hadn't, that maybe our parents and grandparents hadn't appreciated.
Yeah.
So I don't think my parents would ever have any interest in traditional music, whereas I do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that happened because of the influence of people like Planksty.
It was amazing, and people forget that, yeah. And Waterford, in your time, Daisha, were you a city boy or?
Well, city, oh yeah. No, I mean, I recently gave a talk to the Guild of Agricultural Journalists out of the K Club. I confessed to them that I don't think I was ever on a farm until I was in my 20s. You know, I mean, I just didn't have any. I mean, you know, Waterford, okay, it was only, say, 50,000 people, but it felt like a very urban environment. Now, I did, of course, as I said, I did travel the country with my parents for a couple of weeks in the summer, but I don't think my parents had any friends who were farmers. I don't think, you know, Waterford was a very urban place, even though it was only a small enough city. People didn't really have much connection with the country. And I mean, okay, my school probably had 3 or 4 boys that came in from the surrounding areas who would have been from farming families, but it didn't really impact on us very much.
Yeah, no, I worked in Waterford, yeah. There is a city aspect to a town, and the rural part is totally different.
Yeah, and that, you know, I mean, like, obviously, yeah, that's a big thing in Waterford, that the city is its own, you know, I mean, people from West Waterford don't feel the same, you know, they don't have the same kind of, they even have different accents from people in Waterford City.
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting, even though it's a relatively small county, 100,000 people, there's quite a big difference between the western part of the county where people sound like they might be more from Cork.
Yeah, when you cross that bridge, something happens.
It does. It does.
And obviously, you've seen St. Patrick's Day in official capacities in different countries. And what is it about Paddy's Day that makes it so popular or unpopular, depending?
Well, first of all, it's an enormous resource for Ireland. And every year I'm infuriated when I see people saying, oh, the cost of all of this is terrible. I mean, if you calculated the value of the publicity generated by St. Patrick's Day, you just couldn't put a price on it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, every year the Taoiseach comes to Washington when I was there, and still doing it, of course. And, you know, you get a full day devoted to Ireland in Washington, D.C., the most powerful city in the world. The president, the vice president, the speaker of the House, senior senators, administration people spend the whole day wearing their green ties and their green outfits to celebrate America's connection with Ireland. This is an invaluable resource. And people who last year said that Taoiseach should boycott the White House, I was completely appalled by that idea, and I will be again next year if people start banging the same drum once more. No, I mean, this is a huge resource for Ireland, and it's just one of those things that we happen to have. It's an accident of history, but we should hang on to it for as long as we possibly can.
Do you think people who live in Ireland who haven't travelled have a different view of Irishness than people like myself or yourself who've lived abroad and have dealt with good things and bad things about our character?
Probably, yeah. I mean, obviously, like, I'm a fairly pluralistic in the way I view Irishness, in that I feel that anyone who is born in Ireland, regardless of their heritage, is Irish. I think that there are people around the world who identify in different ways with Ireland. Irish Americans, people in Australia, in Canada, and elsewhere. And I think those people belong to a wider Irish family that I'm happy to say is Irish. Now, because when Joe Biden says I'm Irish, a lot of Irish people get kind of a bit annoyed and say, you're not, you weren't born in Ireland. But he doesn't mean he was born in Ireland.
Correct.
It means that he's part of a community in America that calls itself Irish, even though they know that they and their parents, grandparents, even great-grandparents were born in America, but they still want to have that tag on them, which is, I'm Irish. Yeah. So Irishness is a positive thing that Americans want to have on their CV and on their personal identity. And that's a big thing for us, because it's the reason why nearly 2 million Americans come to Ireland every year. I think in 2019, before the pandemic, 1 in 10 Americans who came to Europe came to Ireland. When you consider that we have maybe 1% of the population of the continent of Europe, that's an enormous resource for Ireland. You think about all the American firms that are in Ireland. They're not in Ireland because their chief executives are Irish, but the fact that their chief executives were Irish or had an Irish identity probably meant that they were at least prepared to come and have a look at Ireland. Yeah. And then they decided whether the Irish location suited their company or not. So in all sorts of ways, the Irishness of Irish Americans benefits Ireland hugely. And for example, had it not been for Irish America, we could have ended up with a hard border on the island of Ireland, because they weighed in very heavily to keep that border open. Likewise, the peace process in the 1990s probably wouldn't have succeeded in the way it did without the influence of Irish Americans through Clinton and George Mitchell and so forth. And even if you go back to the 1910s and 20s, Irish America was a very big factor in the British government's calculation that they couldn't afford not to give some form of independence to Ireland.
Correct. And then I'm talking about hard borders. You lived through the Brexit experience in England, UK. That was a totally different view of the world, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I took the view at that time that I couldn't be like other ambassadors who simply said, zip the lips, say nothing. I was out there every day on social media, pointing out the implications of Brexit for British-Irish relations, the implications for Northern Ireland, the implications for the border on the island of Ireland, the implications for British-Irish relations generally. Unfortunately, not enough people paid heed to what I had to say, but I decided it was my obligation to make known those points of view because they weren't being aired by anybody else. And I felt that if I didn't do it, they would not get aired. And so I was one of those who went out and actively spoke out on social media, on the media generally, at meetings, at town hall events and so forth, making the argument that EU membership was a very good thing for British-Irish relations, a very good thing for Ireland, a very good thing for Northern Ireland, and that Brexit will be a disruption on all of those fronts. And that turned out to be very true, of course, in that the Brexit thing has been a major thorn in the side of British-Irish relations for the last 10 years now. Happily, we've now found a new equilibrium with the British, which is a good thing, and which I hope will continue, depending on, for as long as, I hope it continues, because it needs to continue, because we do need to have good relations with our nearest neighbour. Yeah, I know it was oversimplified for British people as well, what it really meant, wasn't it? In all saving money or this and that, it was more. Yeah, look, in all political campaigns, the two sides put forward their best foot forward, right? Yeah. And unfortunately, the best foot of some of the people on the pro-Brexit side was to actually make false claims. For example, the claim that Britain was paying, 200 million euros a week to, 200 million, whatever it was, 391 million pounds a week to the EU budget, and that this money would all be saved. And even though that calculation was based on Britain getting no benefits at all, whereas in fact Britain got huge benefits from the EU budget. Correct. So, they refused to acknowledge the fact that there was a gross payment, which is the one they quoted, but there was also a net payment, which is a lot lower. Yeah. So there was a degree of dishonesty there, I have to confess. And, but it was successfully put forward by people like Boris Johnson, who were very good communicators. I know Boris from my time in Brussels. So, I know what he's like. I know how good he is at putting forward his own point of view. But that point of view was frankly dishonest because it refused to recognize a simple reality that the figure they were quoting was a gross figure, whereas the relevant figure was a net figure, which was a lot lower, because Britain and all parts of Britain got significant benefit from EU membership. And there was no check coming back to them overnight. There were payments made. It was a long-term thing, and they were... the way the EU budget works is that countries pay in to the budget, and then through the various policies of the Union, they get back benefits. So, for example, in the Irish case, we get back benefit from the Common Agricultural Policy. We get back benefit from the EU structural funds. And that was the same for Britain. Even though Britain is not a big agricultural country, and nonetheless, British farmers were getting significant payments from the Common Agricultural Policy, which you have to take away from the contribution that Britain makes in order to get the net figure. Likewise, the poorer parts of Britain, like, Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland and, the north of England, they were getting significant funding from the European Union structural funds. Yeah. So Britain was getting a lot back. And then, of course, it was getting the less tangible, but even more important benefit of having access to the European single market and benefiting their economy in that way. Yeah. Who was your chancellor during your time in Germany? In Germany, it was Angela Merkel the whole time I was there. Right. Yeah. And how was that? Totally different? Yeah, look, Angela Merkel is, I think, a special politician in that she's not charismatic in the normal way. Yeah. Right? She's kind of understated in many ways, but she's a very astute operator, and she, I think, steered Germany through a difficult time because a lot of Germans, weren't too convinced about the euro. And they didn't want to stand behind the euro during the crisis of 2009, 10, 11, where we were exposed in a very big way.
Correct.
And Angela Merkel was one of those who basically understood the importance of the euro and the European Union to Germany, and therefore the need for Germany to put its back into it and not to shirk its responsibility. So even though we got a hard time from the Germans in some ways, you could say that they kind of embraced us with tough love. Nonetheless, at the end of the day, the euro survived and the Irish economy bounced back, and we managed to deal with this existential crisis. It could have ruined our economy for decades. Yeah. And you have to give Angela Merkel some credit for that, in my view.
And is her understanding of people? She's very cerebral, because you don't see her move.
Look, she's a scientist, right? Yes. So I used to always think when she was Chancellor, you had Sarkozy, who was the German president for part of my time anyway. Yeah. And I always felt that Merkel was the exact opposite of Sarkozy.
Tonight's meal, tilapia surprise with boiled cabbage. Begin cooking steps 1 through 50 now.
Are you kidding me? Making dinner shouldn't feel like doing a 1,000-piece puzzle. With Blue Apron's new one-pan assemble and bake meals, the hard part's already done. Pre-chopped ingredients, zero stress. Just assemble, bake, and enjoy. No complicated steps, no mountain of dishes. Try Assemble and Bake today. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Ever find yourself bored or trying to kill time? We have finally found a solution for you. Royal Match. Don't believe me? Let's hear what people say.
Royal Match is such a fun puzzle game. There are over 10,000 levels, also a bunch of mini games, which makes it super exciting.
My favorite part? It doesn't need Wi-Fi. I play on my commute, on flights, even while waiting in line.
And honestly, no ads, not a single one. That's why I'm so into it.
So there you have it, a relaxing, challenging, totally ad-free game that goes wherever you go. Download Royal Match and see why everyone loves it.
Sarkozy got up in the morning, had a new idea, went off and talked to the media about it, and then the whole system had to somehow,
figure it out.
Had to figure out what it meant, and he's a little bit like Donald Trump in some ways, a very powerful figure who was instinctive and had strong views, and he sort of launched those views, and then the French system had to catch up with him somehow and had to make it all happen. Whereas I think in Merkel's case, she's the kind of person that would have had an idea and would have called a seminar in the Chancellery and brought in all the experts and teased it out over a long period of time and then ultimately come to a decision. So the exact opposite of the instinctive. Now, I happen to think that in politics, you need a bit of instinct alongside your kind of technocratic, abilities. I think ultimately Merkel did have the instinct that she understood viscerally that the European Union was more important to Germany than euros and cents.
Yeah, very right, yeah. How was
that there was something more important than because a lot of Germans, I knew Germans who were appalled at what they saw as Germany bailing out the rest of Europe, feckless countries that couldn't manage their economies were now coming to Germany, cap in hand, looking for Germany to bail them out. And of course, I mean, a lot of Germans...
And in fairness, Dan, they were fed up paying people East Germany. They were
it might even be that the majority of Germans would have taken that view.
Yeah.
But the good thing was that Merkel, at least, and the people around her, understood that this was a bigger deal.
Yeah.
And that actually Germany is getting a very good deal from the EU in the sense that it has this massive market, it has good relations with all of its neighbours, its currency is much weaker than it would be if it was on its own. So, there were also the reasons why. I mean, one German economist said to me once, this is now a while ago, this is back in 2010 or there, but he said, Germany benefits from having a first world economy and a second world currency, because the value of the euro was set by the whole Eurozone, not by Germany. Yeah. Whereas if Germany had the Deutschmark during the crisis, Deutschmark would have appreciated in value to the point where Germany would have had difficulty in being competitive.
Correct, yeah. And where do you live, in Bonn?
No, I live in Berlin. I live in a place called Grunewald.
All right.
We have a nice residence there. It's in the area, a lot of the embassies are there. It's a very nice part of Germany. It would have been part of the old West Berlin, and there's it was a very nice place to live, and the housing, the residence there is quite attractive and quite good it's a good place to live. Yeah.
No, I lived 2 years in Stuttgart, and
yeah. Stuttgart is more, it's more southern.
Swabian.
I mean, Berlin is very
trendy, cool.
It is very northern and very eastern as well. It's very close to the Polish border after all. You're talking about an hour's drive to get to places on the Polish border.
Yeah. And your time in Washington then with the esteemed President Trump, how was that?
It was fascinating, yeah. I mean,
fascinating, a big F or fascinating with small F, just fascinating.
Just fascinating with small and big Fs, yeah. I mean, first of all, America is an extraordinary country with the diversity of the American 50 states. Each of the 50 states could be a country in itself, in a kind of a, if you think about Africa, for example, there are probably 40 countries in Africa. Well, there are 50 states in America, and some of them at least would be very viable as separate countries. In fact, probably most of them would be. So and it's got great diversity, from the East Coast to the middle, and then the north and the south, even climatically and so forth. So it's a fantastic country to live in. Also, Americans are extremely warm and friendly. I mean, when they get to know you, they really do take you into their company and they embrace you with a warm embrace. And we met a lot of fantastic people in America who were very generous to us. And, whenever we went anywhere in America officially, the Irish community would rally round and you'd be, welcomed with open arms and with great warmth. And that was something that really impressed me greatly, and people would invite us to their homes for weekends, to their, holiday homes and so forth. So, I mean, Americans are very, they're very fond of Ireland. I mean, some Irish people scoff at this and go, "Oh God, it's cringe making." No, it's not. This is part of American identity. Yeah. Irish America is an American identity, and it's an important identity for many Americans.
It is a thing, and we have to accept that. And
it's a thing. I mean, it just is. I mean, I knew people in America who could tell you where their great grandparents were born.
Yeah.
They could tell you the exact townland where they were born.
Exactly.
I haven't. I mean, I'm sure most Irish people, beyond the grandparents, we probably can't easily go. I mean, if we want to, we can trace it back. But I mean, it's not a thing that most Irish people are that interested in doing.
Yeah. And switching gears, Dan, resilience, is that something typically Irish, unique to Irish, or is just a marketing thing?
I think it's well, if you look at history, right now we won't always be like this because we are now a prosperous, wealthy country in many ways. So, resilience is maybe associated with countries that are maybe on the way up in the world. But if you look back over it, I mean, we managed to secure our independence in 1922 for our part of Ireland anyway, for the Free State, which was not an easy thing to do. It required resilience on the part of the Irish people and those who led the struggle for independence. Even if you look back to the famine of the 1840s, I mean, Ireland recovered pretty well, actually. Now, it was scarred by emigration, of course, but nonetheless, the country recovered from that cataclysmic event. And, by the 1880s, we had a very viable political movement demanding home rule for the country. And then we ended up having a cultural revival in the 1890s, which was probably world class and which showed that Irish people could produce things that were of world class caliber. Whereas, our country had been demeaned and derided for so long and regarded as a kind of a backwater. And yet, by the end of the 19th century, only 40 years after the famine, we were producing literature and thinking of a world class nature. So, and then if you go on further, if you look at the way in which Irish people, when they emigrated, like when the Irish emigrated to Britain, they were subjected to considerable discrimination, and yet they came through. So people I remember meeting people in London who came over with nothing.
Correct.
And ended up as very successful business people, many of them in the construction sector. Right. Likewise, in the States, if you look at the way in which the Irish lived in the ghettos of New York and Philadelphia and Boston in the early years of mass Irish immigration to the United States, it was an incredibly demanding life that these people lived. And yet within a generation, I remember talking to a Jewish American academic in New York who told me, she said, the Irish taught Jewish immigrants how to be American. Because by the by the second generation, those immigrants, their children were teachers. And they had already moved up in the world. after one generation.
It's amazing.
So that was the kind of resilience those people displayed. And even if you look into more recent history in Ireland, look at the way we bounced back from the financial crisis of 2009, 10, 11
to where we are now.
Look at the way we managed the whole COVID thing.
Yeah,
pretty successfully. Our death rates. I mean, we were overzealous in the way we operated, but we saved lives, and people by and large accepted the rules that had to be followed, which were stringent and not very pleasant.
And that was remarkable, considering we believe we're kind of a rebellious people. We actually were very cohesive during that expectation of the COVID restrictions, without question.
No, we were, and I mean, I think it paid off in a big way. And even though in more recent times, the kind of impact of the war in Ukraine, we've managed to give refuge to 100,000 plus Ukrainians, and okay, it's caused a certain strain on the system, and we're stretched in many ways, but it didn't. It didn't cause a kind of an equivalent of Reform UK to emerge from the weeds.
Yeah,
so I mean, that may happen. I'm not saying that we're, virtuous
perfect,
beyond, and beyond the norm. But we are certainly, I think, a people that don't go for the easy option of being bitter and
extreme
and discriminatory.
Yeah,
and that's why I mean, our politics now is still pretty much middle of the road, because although we have a left component, a lot of it are people who would be, I would say, centre left, rather than far left. And on the right hand on the right hand side of the spectrum, we really have relatively small pockets of Farage like politics.
Yeah, and over the years, these
trusting it won't change, because what it would need is some charismatic character might emerge in that particular category and might move things forward in a very dramatic way. But for the moment, at least, people seem to want to stick to the middle ground rather than going for populist solutions that probably wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's where we probably participate, in the middle ground, divide that up. Yeah. But over the years, when you're in the embassies, you want to see the type of people come to receptions over 30, 40 years change in different places. Type of immigrants.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, and I think my predecessors as well, certainly believed that we should open up the embassy to the widest possible range of people. I remember an older person that I met at the embassy who'd been in Britain for maybe, 60 years, 70 years maybe, was saying to me, he said, when I first came here, we wouldn't have been welcome here.
Yeah.
This wasn't for us, So I think the democratization of diplomacy has been a very good thing, and then most of my colleagues in the service, my contemporaries, are people like me that came from kind of ordinary Irish backgrounds. Like we weren't born into a kind of privileged environment. If you go to other countries, you'll find people of kind of formerly aristocratic backgrounds tend to be overrepresented in those services. And, in Britain, even like Oxford and Cambridge people are probably overrepresented in the British Foreign Service. And likewise in America, the Ivy League tends to be dominant. So, I think we're a much more democratic country from that point of view.
Yeah. Well, I remember when Ryanair first started, and the people used to fly to London and were what we called boat people. And now it's totally different demographic.
Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine whose father, emigrated to Britain in the 50s and the 40s maybe, said to me, he said, my father's generation came to build Britain.
Yeah.
And the current generation comes to design Britain. Because you have this kind of coterie now of young Irish people. I used to love meeting them at the embassy. There was this sort of the London Irish Business Group, and they were great because they were all working for the top companies in Britain and occupying prime positions in the in the British system, whereas the previous generations had come over to work as labourers. And I mean, they did a good job, and they made good lives for themselves and their families.
More likely to meet them in Kilburn, somewhere in a pub, rather than...
Yeah, exactly. Whereas now, the Irish are very much part of the fabric of Britain. And, while there was a bit of xenophobia still, in Britain, especially after Brexit, which stoked up the whole xenophobic, dimension there, I think by and large the Irish are now seen as a kind of a valuable part of British society and not in any way alien or one to be resented.
We live in a culture obsessed with dieting, weight loss, and exercise, and that can make eating disorder behaviors easy to miss. But the reality is, eating disorders are serious mental illnesses that take a major toll on your health and your life. But recovery is possible. Eating disorders are more common than you might think. Chances are you know someone who is struggling with one, or maybe you're struggling yourself. If you're concerned about an eating disorder in yourself or a loved one, I want to introduce you to Equip. Equip is a fully virtual, evidence-based eating disorder treatment program that helps patients achieve lasting recovery at home. Every Equip patient is matched with a multidisciplinary care team that includes a therapist, dietitian, medical provider, and mentors. And you get a personalized treatment plan that's tailored to your unique goals and challenges. Equip treats patients of all ages and all eating disorder diagnoses. It's covered by insurance, and there's no wait list. If you think that you or a loved one could be struggling with an eating disorder, don't wait to get help. Visit equip.health to learn more. That's equip.health.
Ever find yourself bored or trying to kill time? We have finally found a solution for you. Royal Match. Don't believe me? Let's hear what people say.
Royal Match is such a fun puzzle game. There are over 10,000 levels, also a bunch of mini games, which makes it super exciting.
My favorite part? It doesn't need Wi-Fi. I play on my commute, on flights, even while waiting in line.
And honestly, no ads, not a single one. That's why I'm so into it.
So there you have it, a relaxing, challenging, totally ad-free game that goes wherever you go. Download Royal Match and see why everyone loves it.
And a personal or iconic or high achievement moment that you have in your mind, or the opposite, Dan? Anything stand out?
Yeah, I suppose my passion is for Irish history and literature. And I suppose being present in Belfast on the 10th of April 1998 for the signing of the Good Friday Agreement was about as iconic a moment as I could have expected to have in my career. So I look back on that with pride and joy that I was there for that epic day when Ireland changed, and I think British-Irish relations changed permanently, and we're still living in the slipstream of that particular achievement.
Yeah, that must have been amazing to be
It was,
there.
and I mean, of course it was, we were exhausted as well because we've been there since Monday, I think it was, and that happened on a Friday. So, and I remember on the Thursday night, we didn't even go back to our accommodation. We just stayed there overnight, and we slept through the night. And I remember, I think, waking up in the morning, in a chair beside the Attorney General. so everyone had the same experience. And I remember going into the to have a shave in the in the bathroom, and I was standing beside Jerry Adams, who was clipping his beard. So it was a strange time. And then, of course, by the time I got to leave, it was late at night because I didn't make the first flight back to Dublin. I was on the second one, and by the time the second one left, of course, it was after dark, and we had to travel out to Aldergrove with an extraordinary motorcade of military vehicles and outriders and armoured cars and so on, protecting this this precious delegation. So by the time we got to the airport, we felt well and truly relieved to be on our plane and back to Dublin.
And a piece of music, Dan, that's travelled with you over the decades?
Yeah, look, I mean, I remember 1974, I think, 1968 it would have been. I was about 13 or 14. And a friend of mine at school who had an older brother who was probably maybe 17, 18 at the time, he lent me Bob Dylan's greatest hits, right? And I avoided him for about a month to try and keep a hold of this record because I played it non-stop. We had a record player we just bought the Christmas before, the first family record player. And I hogged the room where the record player was, and I listened to this disc, I suppose, 4 or 5 times a night for about a month.
Yeah.
And it became ingrained in me, and I've been a Bob Dylan enthusiast ever since. And what it did for me was that it showed that popular culture could have an intelligent strand to it, that it could have an intelligent feel to it. So as a literature enthusiast, I could really respond to someone who could wield words in the way that Bob Dylan could. And then when I was in America in 1974, I had a little pocket radio in my little room in Kansas City at Rockhurst University in Kansas City, Missouri, where I was staying with a friend of mine from UCC, a little pocket radio, and I listened every night to FM radio. And the music I loved then was Steely Dan.
Steely Dan.
Ricky, don't lose that number.
Yeah.
And I still have all the Steely Dan records here in my case beside me, and I play them on a fairly regular basis. And I also like now what's called Yacht Rock, which usually features Steely Dan along with Michael McDonald and people like that. So yeah, those are my formative musical memories.
Michael used to sing backing vocals for some of their songs in the day. Steely Dan.
Oh, he did, of course. He was one of their backing singers. Yeah, he was. Yeah, no, that's true. In fact, I saw him recently, and he's brilliant. I was watching it about 5 years ago. He's got a wonderful voice, and his performances are really, really very good.
Did you see Bob Dylan this week in Dublin, did you?
I didn't know. No. I mean, I saw him in Boston there a couple of years ago. So I've seen the current show, if you like. But I didn't. I would have, if I'd been in Dublin that day, I would have certainly gone along, but I wasn't. So I didn't see him. But I hope he may do one more another farewell tour would be quite nice. I'm sure. He seems to have
a bit like Elton John. Keep saying goodbye, yeah.
He keeps saying goodbye. So, I mean, all these guys are extraordinary in the way they have. The kind of stamina they have. I mean, he does like 150 concerts or more. And he 200 concerts a year at 84 years of age. It's amazing, really.
Yeah, incredible. And poetry. I know you're fond of poetry. And is there anything, Seamus Heaney's your go-to wordsmith?
I go to Yeats and Heaney. Yeah, I mean, I gave a talk recently I mentioned it before, at the Guild of Agricultural Journalists, the K Club, and they wanted to talk about geopolitics.
Yeah.
So I talked about geopolitics using about 6 quotes from different Irish poets and writers. And in fact, I called the talk after a line from Sean O'Casey's play, Juno and the Paycock. If you remember that play, it's a wonderful play.
Yeah.
And Juno was the long-suffering wife of a rather feckless Captain Boyle, who was not actually captain at all. He travelled once on a ferry from Dublin to Liverpool, and after that he called himself captain. And so Captain Boyle, anyway, comes back home, and he's had a good few drinks, and he's with his pal, Joxa. And they're coming back into the house, and he starts singing, Ireland sober is Ireland free. The irony of that is extraordinary. And then he says, I'll tell you what, Joxa, the whole world's in a terrible state of chassis.
Chassis, yeah.
And I said to the people there last week, I said, look, I feel the word chassis is a better word than chaos to describe the state of the world at the moment, because chaos, at least you can kind of get your head around it. There's chaos theory after all, but chassis is something else. And I feel the world has become kind of mispronounced, misconstrued, and we need to get it back to some kind of organized chaos of the kind that's more normal in human history.
Will you come back and fix it all, will you? Or have you had enough?
No, I mean, I continue to write and think about Irish history, literature, and international relations. And in fact, the irony is that when you retire, you have more time to think about things than you had when you were working. Because when you're working, you have a job to do, and you can't sit around, meditating on the state of the world. Maybe you should, but in my experience, you had to get the job done. That was the priority. And therefore, you didn't have much time to be mulling over the state of the world. But now that I'm retired, I have a bit more time to think about it. I have copies of the Foreign Affairs magazine here in front of me, this great American publication that I read on a regular basis, and find that helpful to keep me in touch with things. And plus, I keep in contact with people across the world who are interested in these things, and meet people whenever I can to talk about these issues. So yeah, I'm still passionately interested in the whole international scene, and I want to contribute as much as I can to people's understanding of it. Because I think in Ireland we tend to be a little, because we're an island country, we tend to be a little more insular. We don't have the kind of deep pocket of think tanks that you have in bigger countries. We only have really one international affairs think tank. So I like to contribute as much as I can to the sort of national debate on international issues.
And when you look back at the journey you've travelled, are you surprised, amazed, or it worked out as you expected?
No. First of all, I'm amazed with how Ireland has developed. I wouldn't have ever really anticipated or expected we'd have gone so far in the way that we've journeyed as a country, and the kind of transformation that's occurred in Irish society and Irish life. And all I can say is we should try and keep it up. I think we are facing some difficult choices now, because the world is changing, and it's not as benign to us as it was maybe for the last 30, 40 years. So I'm amazed at that. I'm amazed also at my own personal journey, because when I started in foreign affairs, I probably would have thought, well, if I end up as ambassador anywhere, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And I would have thought a small country somewhere would have been more likely to be my destiny. But I ended up as ambassador to Germany, the United Kingdom, and the United States. And those were 3 posts that I wouldn't really have aspired to at the start of my career, or even in the middle of my career. My career took off really the last 20 years when I started to, get the more demanding posts and managed to cope with them all reasonably well, and then got other demanding posts in turn, which is the way it works really in any career.
Yeah. And are you optimistic about the future?
Yeah, my glass is always half full.
You're half full.
I don't see the point of this relentless, belly aching and running down of things. I mean, I've noticed this on X, which I know is not representative of anything really.
But you're very active on X. I'm surprised you're so active because it can.
Yeah, because I just feel that somebody has to be out there, putting across what I regard as sane and sensible points of view. Because there's a lot of crazy people out there.
No, I believe that's true. I'm very positive about X in that sense, that if you contribute positive stuff, I've never had a bad message back. You know what I mean?
No. The point is that I know there are a lot of people out there who are just there. They're not active because they don't feel that they want to get involved in rows with people on X.
Yeah.
But even though, okay, I might get, if I put out something about defense, I might get 20 responses from people who are angry with me and calling me a warmonger. but my tweet will be seen by maybe 10,000 people. Yeah. So a lot of these people are obviously learning from what I'm telling them, rather than being angry by it. So I just feel I have an obligation as a person with a certain knowledge and experience, and with a following on X as well, that I have an obligation to remain out there, even though you get terrible abuse from people. And I've started getting abuse now more and more from people out there, but I can see that most of them are crazy people. And my attitude is that I'm happy to engage with them. I do as much as I can. I can't do all of it because you can't respond to every message, or you'd be 24 hours a day tied up with X. But I try to respond to people. But what I don't do is I will not engage with anybody who is using vile language. I just block them immediately, and I just don't care. I don't want them in my life, so I just block them. So when I do that, I feel I'm still playing some kind of a role that's worth playing.
Yeah, good. Any Heaney words you want to end on?
Yeah, recently I've been drawing on a Yeats poem that I didn't much use previously, which is from Meditations in Time of Civil War, about we have fed the heart on fantasies. The heart's grown brutal from the fair. More substance in our enmities than in our love. And I think the world we have today is a bit like that, where the fantasies that are being spread are the ones I mentioned, the ones that you find so much on social media. And they have made the heart brutal. And they made it difficult for people, again, using Yeats' words, to cast a cold eye on life. But the Heaney quote that I like comes from a poem that has been quoted by Bill Clinton and by Joe Biden. In fact, Bill Clinton once showed off in my presence a copy of a handwritten version of this poem given to him at the American Embassy in Dublin in the 90s by Seamus Heaney. And this is the Cure at Troy, where he says, he has his lines, this is a translation of a Greek drama, where he says, we must believe that a farther shore is reachable from here. And he talks about once in a lifetime, justice can rise up and hope and history rhyme. I just think those lines, hope and history rhyme, are a genius way of capturing what we need to do, what we need to be as a people and as a civilization. We must try to rhyme or connect hope and history, because this relentless running down of Ireland and running down of everything that the modern world stands for, that's a very dark and divisive and ultimately sinister project, which I will not be part of. In fact, I will resist as much as I can.
Dan Mulhall, thank you for joining us today.
We live in a culture obsessed with dieting, weight loss, and exercise. And that can make eating disorder behaviors easy to miss. But the reality is, eating disorders are serious mental illnesses that take a major toll on your health and your life. But recovery is possible. Eating disorders are more common than you might think. Chances are you know someone who is struggling with one. Or maybe you're struggling yourself. If you're concerned about an eating disorder in yourself or a loved one, I want to introduce you to Equip. Equip is a fully virtual, evidence-based eating disorder treatment program that helps patients achieve lasting recovery at home. Every Equip patient is matched with a multidisciplinary care team that includes a therapist, dietitian, medical provider, and mentors. And you get a personalized treatment plan that's tailored to your unique goals and challenges. Equip treats patients of all ages and all eating disorder diagnoses. It's covered by insurance, and there's no wait list. If you think that you or a loved one could be struggling with an eating disorder, don't wait to get help. Visit equip.health to learn more. That's equip.health.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
Parles-tu français?
¿Hablas español?
Parli italiano?
If you've used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based technique teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world. With lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers, Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/acast. Spelled BABBEL.com/acast. Rules and restrictions may apply.